All right, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Dan Noonan. This is the new committee for the Budget Advisory to our Board of Directors. Thank you for coming. And I'd like to just have a round of introductions if we could. So Gary, I'll start with you.
Yeah, Gary Gustafson, 704 Gambler.
And Gary sits on the committee with myself as well.
I'm Paige Coleman, I'm the general manager.
Gary Frisbee, owner relations, and I'm in 775.
Terry?
Here, I'm new owner and High Point, Terry Ryan, 632.
And when the audience speaks up, at least right now, if you could just speak up, we do have a mic right there, but if you're going to speak during the session, I'd like you to come up here so you're much closer to the mic and people can see you, if that's all right.
Bob Rubin, 307 and 308 in the lodge.
Okay.
Phil Ward, also a new resident, 626.
Where you from, Phil? Home?
No, Phil's.
Nice. Carla?
Harley Peters, 5.581.
Great, thank you.
And Dan, there's a mic right there, so they just
Okay,
front row.
will they be able to, oh yeah, they can.
Yeah.
If we could put a chair up there for them, that'd be great. You throw that on that spot. So I'd like to just go over a couple ground rules if we may. We're gonna have the meeting is scheduled from 10 to noon. If we go shorter, fine, but we won't be going longer. I've always found in my career that your capacity to sit is based upon what is attached to the chair. So we will not go any longer than noon. When you speak, if it's at the audience or up here, I need you to come up to the table and sit so we can hear you clearly. That's been a request of a lot of people on Zoom meetings. This budget committee is here to help out our board. We're not here to create individualized issues. This is issues concerning the budget. Not here to talk about people's personalities, mine or otherwise. We're going to keep it issue-based. If it gets off of being issue-based, I will stop you. And we're going to keep this positive and move forward. You know, and hearing a lot of the history of our finances over the long haul, we're in great shape. In 2012-ish, Gary, what was the last time we had virtually no capital fund balance?
I don't know. 2012 is when I first started the job, and I wasn't aware of what the capital fund was at that time. Joe,
you
Are you talking about reserve funds, Dan?
yes.
The last time we had zero reserve funds was probably 2006-07 in that neighborhood.
So looking at it now, roughly about 950,000 budgeted by the end of this year. That's pretty amazing. So we're here to maybe do some fine tuning and some tweaking. And at the same time, what are the issues that owners feel like need to be addressed? And are they being addressed? And can we help the board move forward in a positive manner, creating a more of a solid community? So everyone knows what's going on. Mark on the landscape committee took over and kind of has been running the roof project. And he's been holding coffee clutches and sending out data information. So he's really been on top of keeping us all educated. And I think that's what I would like to follow in his footsteps and be able to do with the budget committee. Let's see. I think that's it. So I'd like to go around as at least to the board members to have you introduce yourself, what unit number you're in, why you're interested, a little bit of your background, nothing long and in depth, but just so people have an understanding. So Gary, I'll start with you.
Well, I'm full-time resident. I've been here for about 5 years. Moved from Austin, Texas. I'm a former small business owner for about 30 years. I've owned 4 or 5 different businesses over that time period. So budgeting and running a business operation is something that I'm used to doing over the years. I also served for about, I think a total of about 18 years on HOA boards in Austin and Horseshoe Bay, Texas, on condos that we own there. So I've got a pretty extensive background, both in financial for small businesses and trying to make a business that's profitable and, kind of getting the most bang for the buck. So anyway, I just felt like I could probably at least give some input and some opinions that might help out in the long run. So that's why I've stepped up and put myself in position to help the board.
Thank you, Gary. Cheryl?
Good morning. I'm Cheryl. I'm at High Point 602, 603. I also have units at the lodge that we have been at for the last 3 years. We've kind of made Tamaron our second home, and we're looking forward to trying to help make everything more wonderful up there with however we can. So I decided to join the committee to see what I can intellectually help with this. I currently run a small business that's construction in Arizona and Colorado, but I also own and run a large business where we have 70 wireless stores throughout the United States. So I'm hoping that with my knowledge with finance and running businesses, I'll be able to be an asset to this committee.
Thank you, Cheryl. Mary Helen?
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation. Yes, so I am a newbie at Tamaron. I bought unit 772 in Gamble Oak in March. And why am I interested? So unit Mary Helen O'Leary. Sometimes I go by Mary Helen Threlkeld, which is my legal name. My married name is O'Leary. So you might see one or the other or both. So a little confusing. Why am I interested? Also, similar to Cheryl and Gary, I have a finance background. I've been a CFO for many years. I have mostly my background has been a financial exec in the tech world. But just this year, I hung up my CFO slippers and I am launching a lawn maintenance business here in Houston, Texas. So I hope to get that up and running and spend more time at Tamaron. And I hope that my financial background can help. I don't have a big background in HOAs, but I'm willing to learn.
Great, thank you very much.
Mhm.
Stuart, I see you're able to make it on. If we just give a brief history of yourself and unit number, and we would appreciate it.
Oh, you're on mute, Stuart. Oh, you're on mute. We can't hear you, Stuart. Okay.
Stuart, we're not hearing you.
Oh. Stuart, do you want to check your microphone settings? Oh.
Okay, now it seems to say, all
All
right,
right, you're there.
there. Okay, great. All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. I was trying to set everything up. I live in the lodge, unit 404, and I don't bring anywhere near the financial expertise that the rest of you do. But I was a member of my HOA where I live in Florida for several years, including being the president. So I'm familiar with HOA management and various other elements, and I'm curious to help out however I can.
Thank you, Stuart. Stacy?
Hi, everybody. I'm Stacy Lanius. Home base is in Texas. We have 2 units up at High Point. One is 587, 88, and the other is right next door, 589. I am in my 2nd year on the board, and I have a very long accounting career, and thought I could just help this committee And looking for input for the 2024 budget and perhaps facilitate communication and requests with the business office and the board, and assist how I can. Happy to be here. Happy to see everybody.
Thanks, Stacy. My background, I moved to Durango in 1975. I got interested in the volunteer fire service and found that to be my avocation and my passion. I was able to become career firefighter in 1986 for the fire department that protected this area. So that was Hermosa Cliff Fire Protection District. So I started assisting in budgets and working with boards in 1986. I became chief in 89 of this fire department. And then I was totally in charge of the budget for up here on the mountain. We merged fire departments in 2002. And I stepped down to be assistant chief. We merged with the city of Durango, the two outlying agencies, and made one larger, what they call an authority. So the legal government still existed. Participated in assisting in the budgets till 2007, when I became the fire chief of that combined organization called Durango Fire Rescue Authority. We then in 2011-13 merged it into one legal entity, dissolved all the other entities. Too much government, way too much government. And that was successful. So when I retired in 2016, our budget was about 11.5 million. It had 16 fire stations, 325 square miles that we protected, 70 career firefighters, and about 75 volunteers. So budgets have been part of my life. We answer to the community. You all pay taxes through your property taxes, and some of that money goes to the fire department, overseen by a board of directors. So that relationship of board management, board fire chief has been very close to me for a long time. So I would just like to assist in trying to create maybe a more open community where people are willing to talk about it and get involved. I know there are a lot of individuals that have wonderful past experiences and expertise. One of my neighbors spent 40 years in the asphalt business. So to me, if we're ever going to do any asphalt work, he's the guy we should go seek out. So I just know there's a lot of individuals on property of owners that have expertise that could aid us and benefit us as a community. So with that, I'd like to quickly read the mission statement that was approved by the board to form us. The mission statement of the TACO Budget Advisory Committee, an ad hoc committee reporting to the TACO Executive Board, is to provide input to the board regarding the development presentation of the 24 annual budget. The board encourages the committee to present its input prior to the TACO owners meeting on September 8th, but will accept input from the committee up until the budget meeting. The board will take the committee's input into consideration as it prepares the 24 TACO budget. The board president may, at his or her discretion, ask the committee to address other matters related to the TACO budget. Rick, by the way, you stepped out when we were doing introductions. I'll let you pipe in.
Okay, I'm Rick Hughes. I'm the president of the board here at Tameron for 4 more weeks. I'll be termed out. This is my 6th year. My background, I've got an undergraduate in accounting, master's in finance. I'm retired from UPS, 36 years there. And we had a family business where I was treasurer and prepared everything, all documents, tax reports, everything. So I've got a little bit of a financial background also. And the board is excited to have this committee. We have a portion of the budget that has some variable costs, some discretionary funds. And that's what we're looking to get the input on. And we're looking to get the communication and input from the community that we hope this committee can bring to us.
Thank you, Rick, and thanks for giving us the opportunity. So to the committee then, based upon our agenda, what are the pre-existing documents and or contracts, any relationships that you believe we ought to acquire, get a copy of it, digest it. If there's any questions, ask them, get the proper answers if they're available. If not, research them. So I'd like to just maybe if we could create a list of what you think should be reviewed. So this is where you all pipe in.
So is this a question to the board or the committee?
This is a question to the committee. Us.
So as a newbie, I guess, my question would be, before I could actually suggest anything, it would be nice to have someone walk us through the balance sheet and the different operating P&Ls, or not the P&Ls, as well as the capital spend budget or recommendations, just so we all know how it all links together.
Is the rest of the committee okay with that? We actually have pre-queued up Mr. Carey for that purpose, to make sure we understand what's on these sheets. What I don't want to get into at this time, though, is detailed number analysis, other than as you say, what are the balance sheets, what are the operations, what are the different funds, and how do they exist? And do you all have any questions or need definitions in any of the line items?
I'd like to jump in really fast, Dan, and for the committee members and for everyone, the annual budget meeting is available on the website, as are the financial reports from every meeting. I thought everybody had reviewed those, but I may have missed that. And so that's where you can really learn how the budget is put into place and the different components of it, and all that information is available. You know, as Dan said, Joe is going to do a high level description of what the different accounts are that you see, but the board meeting financial reports and the budget meeting from last November those are going to provide you with a lot of the in-depth background information.
Joe, I'll let you grab it.
Dan, could I pipe in for just a second? To
Yes,
answer
sir.
the question that you posed, in reviewing the financial documents over the last several days, relating to contracts, it seems to me that there are two contracts that would be helpful for the committee to know, to help us understand everything, and that would be the contract with BHP and contract with Cliffside Restaurant.
Well, I'm sorry, what was the second one?
Cliffside Restaurant.
Both sides. All right, thanks, Stu. Joe, if you would just maybe kind of give us that overview you and I discussed, and I think that the membership is kind of looking for.
Sure. I think Gary has a copy of the
You want the budget, Joe?
as of June 30th, what do you want? You want to go over the budget, or do you want to go over the financial statements?
Well, I think the financial statements will pretty much hit the budget, so yeah, the financial statement would be fine.
Okay. We're gonna flip those. Hang on, Joe. Is that-
Sure.
I think that's it right there, isn't it? Yep.
Can you squeeze that down a little bit, Gary, or I guess
Squeeze
you'll
it.
just scroll through it. Okay, so our financial statements that are compiled and produced on a monthly basis throughout the year are two basic statements: the balance sheet, and then the profit and loss statements, or what some people call the income statements. Those of you that have financial backgrounds, you know what a balance sheet is. A balance sheet is a snapshot in time. This is as of, the date that it was produced. And it's a summary of the entity's assets and liabilities. Assets are cash assets, checking and savings accounts, our reserve funds, accounts receivable, and other assets, property assets, and so forth, comes to a bottom line. And then liabilities and equity. Liabilities would be accounts payable, any loans that we might have, and equity. And that, those of you in the accounting world know that in an ideal world, these two things, assets and liabilities plus equity, balance out. So that's the balance sheet. And then we have the income statements. And I've always said that I'm more of an income statement guy. I like to follow the money. Balance sheet to me is more, I'm more comfortable with the income statements. So anyway, if you want to scroll down now, Gary, to the first page of the income statements. Okay. So our income statement is broken down into two major components, one being income and then one being expenditures. The income is, you're looking at that page right now, and it's comprised of those items, primarily assessment fees that are billed to owners, your HOA fees, and then a number of other revenue streams that we have. And if anybody is unclear on what any of these might be, you know, it's a brief description, it's a title. If you need me to expound on what the detailed components are of those line items, I can do that for you.
Just mention what 416 is.
Service and collection fees. This is basically any interest and or late fees on past due on past due assessments.
And is the transfer fees the money we're acquiring on sales?
Transfer fee, there's a, I believe it's $300 right now, $250 or $300. Go ahead.
$350.
Yeah, okay, so on every property transaction, there's an administrative fee for preparing the paperwork and doing the administrative work that's required in a property transfer. And that's added to the closing costs for that particular for each transaction. And that's what 420 is.
Thank you.
Any other questions on income?
Joe, I have a question on 404, maintenance revenue.
Yep.
How is that determined and set up?
How is the budget determined, or how is the amount spent determined?
No, the income itself, how is that generated?
It's mostly build maintenance activities by BHP inside an owner's unit. An example would be an owner calls maintenance, says my toilet won't flush. Maintenance comes up and repairs the toilet, and the owner's billed for that, and that goes into the maintenance revenue.
So BHP's portion of what they get from the revenue, is that figured into their annual contract then?
BHP bills us on an hourly basis for work that they perform on behalf of the association.
Okay.
And that's shown in an expense line further down in this statement.
So is that actually a wash then?
It's a partial wash because the majority of what BHP does is not billed directly to the owners. It's property maintenance activities like landscaping, building maintenance, snow removal, shoveling snow, things like that. Most of that is covered in other lines. A very small percentage of what BHP does for the association is actually billed directly to the owners.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
yeah.
Go ahead,
Alright.
Joe.
All right, if there's no other questions on that group there, Gary, if you want to scroll down to, yeah. All right, so this next major group is expenditures, and that's broken down into a couple of categories, administrative being the first one. So these line items you're looking at now: insurance, accounting, legal fees, web services, property taxes. This is all what we consider or put in the category of administrative expenses. Any questions on any of those?
Yes, I have a question. In light of Gary's email the other day about having to search for a new insurer, do we have any idea yet what the impact will be on this 135,000 in the next budget?
Well, what we're being told is it's going to be significant. How significant, we're not quite sure yet. We've heard a lot of numbers thrown about. We don't have anything concrete yet. We have multiple broker agents working on it right now. I just spoke to one this morning. I actually have a conference call with another one right after this meeting. One of them is coming close to being able to have some hard numbers. He's telling me probably within the next couple of weeks. But it's all over the map. Some of the properties in the North County have seen tenfold increases in their policy premiums. We're hoping ours doesn't reach that, but we just don't know at this point.
So no range available from what you've received yet.
I've not received any hard numbers. All I've gotten so far is feedback from other properties. Some of the property managers and association presidents I've been talking to. Rick has some contacts up here in the North Valley, and he's gotten some numbers. Some of them have been enormous. If we have to deal with numbers that big, it's going to be a real challenge, but we don't know what it is yet. So
Okay, thanks.
yeah.
Joe, it's Cheryl. I had passed along my broker that covers all of my stores throughout the United States. Have you talked to Wayne? If not, I can work with you on trying to get a number from them as well.
Yeah, so here's the thing on that. Like I said, we currently have 4 broker agents actively working the markets for us. One of the things we've come to learn in this process is that the carriers and underwriters are not, they don't like to have to respond to multiple requests for quotes for the same property. And we've had some of that start to happen. Each broker that we have working on it may not know what carriers the others are working with. So the carriers may be getting a request for quote from 2 or even 3 different brokers. That creates a difficult situation for the carriers and one they like to shy away from. So along the way here, as we've gone through this process of trying to get our hands around what our insurance is going to cost us and get some hard quotes, we've had some brokers come back to us or and say, well, I'm working with these companies and I'm working with these companies and there's crossover, and we don't want that crossover. So the more brokers that we add to the process, the more chance there is for that to happen. I don't I've got one guy now, and I think and I forget who put us onto him. His name is John Null. And we did put out this broadcast to the owners and said, if anybody's in the insurance business and can help us out, we'd like to hear from you. And we did hear from 3 or 4 owners on this, and they gave us names. And I've contacted those. I've contacted everybody. So the one guy that I just talked to today, he wants to put it out to his markets, and I just felt like I had to say, well, look, we've got other people working on it. Can you tell us who your markets are, so we're sure we're not doubling up and tripling up? So that's the challenge we've got. So if we add more, we're just adding more of that complexity to it. I know that was a long-winded answer, but that's.
No, understood. If you need any help, though, let me know, because I'm in difficult markets. I'm in Alaska and I'm in Hawaii, so I know how hard it is to insure a condo community.
Yeah, well, the thing is that right now, the markets that are the property markets that are the most difficult and are comparable to what we have are California and Florida.
And yeah, if that's difficult.
California because of the fires, and Florida because
of the hurricanes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, my insurance in Florida just went up as well for all of our stores there, so completely understood.
Yeah, yeah.
Joe,
hang on a second. Let me I want to silence this phone so I don't keep getting these notification noises. All right, go ahead.
Joe, this is Dan. Just one question. Are we putting on the table at this point an option to be maybe closer to being more self-insured? Pick a number that our deductible is a much higher number, and then have a secondary insurance?
That's something we've talked about, and we don't want to. I don't think we want to. It's nothing's off the table at this point, and I have heard of some properties in our area that are actually considering that, going self-insured, because of the enormity of the premiums that they're seeing.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on what you see on that page? Okay, Gary, scroll down some more. All right, stop right about there. Okay, so the second major category of expenditures is operations. So you've got the BHP contract right there. Snow removal, everybody knows what happened last winter. So any questions there?
Is that
I
part
guess
of,
oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, is that part of BHP's contract, the snow removal?
Pardon me?
Is the snow removal part of BHP's contract?
Well, they provide the snow removal, so yes, it's not, it's part of their contract, but the contract labor, the 610 contract labor, that's building, that's our buildings, our landscaping. We split the snow removal out because it's so hard to predict, as was the case this year. But yes, that's they bill us separately for snow removal, so we're able to track it separately.
So is the budget on snow removal, is that based on like a 5-year history, or how's that?
I've always used a 5-year history, yes. And I'm losing yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah, I'm using a 5-year history, and it's always been in the 60 to 75,000 range. We bumped it up this year, but obviously not nearly enough. What we do next year is going to be a big question, because it's always been the case where you have a really good snow year and you follow it with one that's either average or below average. So what's Mother Nature going to do? We don't know.
Did we had a big year in 2018 and 2019, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2018-19, following the fire. Yeah, we did.
Any idea what we spent on snow removal that year?
It was about 100 and I'm just shooting from the hip here. I could find it, but it was, I'm guessing it was about 115, 120,000, something like that.
Joe,
This, what you're seeing there is, we've never seen it that high. Never, ever, ever. It's crazy.
I just, I want to jump in here and say that this topic was discussed in depth in our February, was it early February board meeting? And so if you want to know and understand at the time, all of the efforts made for snow removal and the costs, that's a good meeting to go back to. And we did do an analysis of the cost of 2018 versus this year. And it was actually broken down by the different services involved. I think it was like the plow, the shoveling. Anyway, I'll go back and make a note to provide that to the committee for further discussion.
Yeah, there was a lot of, the two major components of snow removal are the plowing and the hand shoveling, but this year also there was a lot of ice dam removal, snow and ice removal from the roofs, and that's very expensive.
Yeah, so I can get the committee that analysis comparing the 2 years, and then if I really suggest watching that February board meeting for in-depth conversation about the snow removal budget.
Joe, line 624 grounds, that's just outside of the normal maintenance, that small number?
That's mostly materials and outside contracts for grounds. Most of our grounds work is covered in 610 in the contract labor. BHP, their guys run the lawnmowers. They do the day-to-day groundskeeping. The 624 would be like if we buy mulch, we buy materials, we spray for fertilizing and weed control, that sort of thing. That's what's covered in 624.
So I had just a couple questions. I guess it's fair to assume that the first two line items, 610 and 612, are essentially everything that's done by BHP. And the rest of them are things like materials and other people that come in.
No, actually 612 is like the grounds I just explained. 612 building maintenance is, again, it's materials for building maintenance, buying plumbing parts, electrical parts, and any outside contracts. For instance, our property, it's a requirement at our property because we're a multifamily property that any electrical work has to be done by a certified licensed electrician. We don't have a certified licensed electrician on staff or on BHP or in the BHP group. So if we have to have any electrical work done, we have to hire an electrical contractor to do that. And that's in 612.
Okay.
All of BHP's labor is in 610, except for snow removal.
Okay, and so a lot of the other things would be materials and contracts and external people, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that the roof project on the lodge will greatly reduce the amount of money we had to spend on ice dam removal. The other one,
yeah, I mean that's another subject, but yes,
right.
the contract for the roof, for the lodge roof, does include hot edge, drainage, in order to mitigate ice dams. Yes.
And so to go back on into the just to clarify something for me on the maintenance revenue income, does that, and because I see an item down here that says outside services billed to owners, how do those two correlate, and does that revenue come to Taco and we're spending 25,000 on outside services billed to owners?
Yeah, there is
How do these correlate?
those two, you're correct. Those two things do tend to offset each other. Gary, what's the actual components of 613? What goes into 613 now?
613 is primarily if we have to bring in an HVAC person for either heat or air conditioning, if we have to bring in an outside plumber, anytime Roto-Rooter comes or M&R Plumbing, if they come and they work on a particular unit, that goes into 613. Any outside contractor who comes in and performs work in a particular unit, that's what goes into 613.
Right.
But
No, we also have outside contractors come and do building maintenance, which doesn't get billed to owners. So there's two. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the maintenance, just to clarify again, the maintenance revenue, where does that go? Does that go to Taco, or are we spending some of that? I see, outside services billed to owners. I see that.
That's it. Outside services billed to owners is a cost.
Right, exactly. And the
That's an
revenue, how does the
expenditure.
revenue come to us? I'm sorry, I
Maintenance
didn't quite
revenue-
understand that.
Maintenance revenue is money coming in,
How?
and it goes in the bank. I mean, it's
Okay.
tracked here, but it goes in the bank.
So we are, can you give me an example of something that we would collect maintenance revenue?
In account 404?
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's like I said before, it's like if an owner calls and maintenance says, my toilet won't flush. Well, maintenance goes up and replaces some parts in the toilet, makes it work.
And then we bill the owner. I understand that. And then the outside services billed to owners. That's a cost that we then sort of offset by charging them up in 404.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on this page? All right, Gary, scroll down. Okay, so the rest of the operations is what you see there. Any questions on any of those? Okay, the next category is personnel. Oh, too far, Gary. Okay, right there. Okay, so the next category is personnel expenses. We have a number of direct employees that do maintenance operations. So our maintenance is a combination of BHP and our own employees. And so our own employee salaries, benefits, taxes, workman's comp is shown here. Next category is utilities. So water and sewer, satellite TV, electricity, internet, refuse service. Any questions on any of those? All right. Go to the next page, Gary. Okay, so the next page is capital expenses. And for you guys on the committee, on Dan's committee, this is the area where you can have the most influence. Most of what you saw up to now are relatively fixed expenses. Yeah, we could talk about getting our garbage picked up by a different contractor or getting our snow removal done by a different contractor. And yes, there's that. We could make incremental changes in the budget by doing that. But as far as making wholesale changes in the budget, this is where you're probably going to want to focus your thoughts and your time.
Could I ask a quick question? One of the questions I had kind of overall on all these P&Ls, is there on our HOA fees, is there a certain percent that goes to the operating versus capital? How does that all get funded?
Well, if you look at the easiest way to answer that question, if you look at the top line that you see on the screen there,
Mhm.
400 assessment fees. That is the amount of that is the amount of your assessments that are allocated for this year for the capital projects that are listed below. So
So
you
it's not it's not a fixed percent of HOA fees,
No.
it's variable,
it's variable year to
depending
year.
upon,
It's
okay,
variable year to year.
okay.
Yep. All right, so any questions on any of those? Okay, next page, Gary. Okay, so this is a look at at permanent reserves. So there's income lines for the permanent reserves. Those are the line items that are contributing to adding to our reserves for this year. Any questions on any of those?
The only question I have on this is not necessarily the income, but the memorandum, if you could walk me through that.
Yeah, I was wondering when somebody was going to ask that on some of the other pages. Accountants don't like to have, they don't like to put on income statements, they don't like to put beginning balances. Accountants like to start everything with zeros. So you start the year on January 1st with 0 income and 0 expenses, and then you go from there. In order to make our budget work and develop it properly, we have to look at what we have in the bank. We have to look at what money we have on hand, and some of that is in reserves, and some of that is in our operating funds when we begin the year. So in order to show that on these income statements, our accountants over the years have required us to do this on these memorandum lines, so we can see what we actually have and then develop the budget based on what we need, how much money do we need to bring in based on what we know is going to go out to get us to where we need to be. So that's what that is.
So, so one question I have is that 1.5 million, what does that represent? The net, because I would think that I would see that over on the balance sheet and I don't. And so that's why.
Well, it's skewed right now. What's skewing that right now is 405, the Lodge Special Assessment. And I need to talk to Elisa because I'm not sure that's where this needs to be. So we may need to make an adjustment. That's the money we've so far collected from the lodge owners for the roof assessment. $601,000 is what's been collected so far.
And Joe, you're right. I think we've already talked about moving that over to the capital side.
Right. Yes.
And that will show up in July.
Yes. Well, I don't know. I need to talk to Elisa about it and get this squared away.
That is,
it may not be July,
by the way.
It may not be July, but it'll certainly be before the end of the year. Yeah.
So is the special assessment not the funds collected on that, not on the balance sheet, or is that part of AR?
I'm not sure if they're on the balance sheet or not. Well, this is yeah. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I'll have to get back to you on that.
I think it's in AR, but I can't see that screen and I don't have any paperwork with me.
Let me look at AR. Yeah,
it's a really high amount, and so I would assume that was probably where it is.
Yeah, right now, Elisa, AR is about $1 million too. So
and that's too high for just regular assessments in June.
Yeah.
Although June is when we bill for the third quarter. So
yeah, but that's it's got to be in there because that's
I know. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So it's
Thank
in
you.
account 132 right now on the balance sheet.
Got it.
Yeah, we'll get that squared away. We need to, Elisa and I have been talking about this and we need to rearrange this a little bit so it's easier to understand when we do the reports.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Joe,
I
I'm
do have
sorry.
a question,
Can you remind me
Joe.
what 442 is?
Go ahead.
Would you remind me what 442 is? This is Dan.
That's the, so capital contribution from sales. That's the other, fee, if you will, that's charged on closings. It's the equivalent to 2 months, I'm sorry, 2 quarters of regular assessments. So when a new owner buys a unit, they immediately contribute the equivalent of 2 quarters of base assessments into reserves upon sale. And that's to kind of, the philosophy behind that is the owners that have been around a while have been putting their money into the reserves, and then you know, we might spend money out of reserves, and owners who have been here a while could theoretically be contributing more than owners who haven't been here a while to whatever it was that comes out of reserves. So this is a trend in HOAs right now. Many HOAs across the country are doing this. It was brought up a couple of years ago by a couple of owners, Eric Tibbetts being one of them, and it was something we thought was a good idea to help add more revenue to our reserves on a year-over-year basis. That's what that is.
Thanks. So our sales are obviously doing well this year.
Oh yeah, it hasn't slowed down. I mean, the prices have leveled off, but the turnover in units at Tamaron is just, boy, it just keeps going.
And
Joe,
Joe,
I had
I
a question.
believe it is 2 months worth, not 2 quarters worth.
Is it 2 months? Okay, I thought that might have been the case. All right.
I had a question on reserves. Can you just sort of refresh our memory on the structure that we use for funding reserves and how it correlates with the any state requirements? What percentage of our assets go to funding reserves, et cetera, and so on? And on what basis are we doing it
Well, what
to
percentage?
fulfill the needs that we see?
Well, first of all, it's not a percentage of assets. It's a percentage of Kiowa requires that a certain percentage of assessments.
That's what I meant. Sorry.
Be contributed to reserves, and we're meeting that requirement. What is it? Do you know what it is, Elisa, right now?
I don't. It's a little over 10% of
That's what I
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
the assessment.
Yeah.
And is our strategy to fully fund or fund at a certain percentage of perceived needs into the future? How do we do that?
Well, when you say fully fund, I'm not sure how you define that.
I would think it would be meeting all of the perceived needs as revealed in a reserve
Well,
study. that I'm
okay,
sure
well,
we
that's
do.
all right. I think I know where you're going
'Cause
with
I
that.
think we
So
go to a percentage of that, but I just
are you talking about the asset replacement?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all you have to do is look at the numbers that are in the asset replacement and look at the numbers that we have in reserves. And you know, just by looking at the two, that we don't have enough money in reserves and won't have enough money in reserves to fund all those into the future. I've explained this to folks before. The asset replacement plan is a spending plan. It's not a funding plan. So funding can come from various sources. Funding can come from reserves, it can come from loans, and it can come from special assessments. Prime example of that is what we're doing on the lodge roof right now. A portion of that lodge roof cost is coming from reserves, and a portion of it is coming from special assessments on the lodge owners. So it would be inconceivable to me to think that we could actually build reserves enough to have enough money in reserves to fund all the projects that are in our asset replacement plan. I think that's unrealistic. You've got to look at other funding vehicles. You've got to look at special assessments, you got to look at loans. It's what everybody does.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay, last page, Gary.
I'm sorry, one
Nice.
more quick question. What's the difference between the permanent reserve and the capital income statement?
On the, go back to that page, Gary. Can you go back? Okay, what was the question?
There's two P&Ls. One says capital and the other one says permanent reserve. And I just asked what the difference is.
Two P&Ls. One says capital and one says, oh, you mean the page before the capital plan?
Perhaps, if you go up there, let me see. If you could scroll up, it's a total income of 150,000.
Okay. I know what you're talking about. All right. So all right. So reserves are there for emergencies,
Mhm.
for either large planned expenses or unplanned expenses. That's why you have reserves. It's so that you have money to cover things that come up suddenly, or perhaps to partially cover long range large expenditures. All right.
Mhm.
The annual capital budget are one time for 1 year projects that don't repeat themselves. So the capital budget is for, like, if I can pick something off of there, deck railing repainting, account 806. Gary, can you scroll back down to the capital budget so everybody can see what I'm talking about?
Down or
No, back up. I'm sorry, up. Yeah. Okay. So you see the deck railing repainting 806. So when the budget was developed for this year in 2022 in the fall, we looked at a number of things that needed done. And these are things that aren't done on a year over year basis. So we looked at, there's some decks. So there was some deck railings that need repainting. Once we repaint them, they're good for who knows how many years.
Mhm.
So that's an example of that. The parking lot in the lodge, we have a parking lot resurfacing plan that covers that we do on a rotating basis. So once every 4 years, the lodge gets done. Once every 4 years, the High Point gets done, so on and so forth. So these projects aren't done every year. They're done every 4 years. So you don't want them over on the operating budget, because if you had a parking lot repair for the lodge, 3 out of 4 years, you'd have no money in it. So you have it over here in the capital. The other projects are the same way. These are things that come up once in a while or very infrequently, and they need to get done. And if we know about them ahead of time, we can put them in the budget. And then we have count 830, which is unplanned capital expenses, which we learned years ago that there was always going to be stuff that came up. You don't know what you don't know. And so we put in this account, unplanned capital expenses, to cover things that pop up that we didn't know about. It's something that happens in July of 2023 that we didn't know about in the fall of 2022 when we put the budget together. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. On the permanent reserve, then there's so this is, I think your point here is that the contribution from capital of 80, or I guess ultimately for this year of 160K is really, that's it's adding to this other budget, but it's a smaller amount that gets moved over here for these longer and bigger expenditures
Right.
into the permanent. Okay.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah. Every year we put money into reserves and we take money out of reserves. Every year we do this.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so Gary, if you want to scroll down back to the last page again. Okay, so this is the service and security desk, which, you know, it's there for the benefit of owners. They make keys, they do the alarm monitoring. They're there in case of an emergency, somebody to call in the middle of the night if something goes wrong. So we have this security desk, and it needs to be funded. And it costs us about $175,000 a year to maintain it. So we need to get the money from somewhere. So we get some money from the general fund, we get some money from rentals to fund the front desk because that's where rentals are serviced. And then there's a few expenses. So any questions on any of that? And there you have it.
All right, from anybody online that's not on the committee or anyone here in the room, do you all have any questions at this point in reference to the line item budgets that Joe has been explaining? All right, let's take a potty break by about 5 or 8 minutes and we'll come back.
Sounds good.
The two people do, I mean, they overlap VHB or something like that.
They're, right now, they're weekends.
Is everyone from the committee back?
Our people work weekends and
That's
the janitor.
that's the same thing.
Okay,
And then the janitor. when we kind of-
so Joe did a great job in going over and reviewing the budgets and the income statements and the P&Ls.
Here,
I know some of you still probably have and want to delve into some line items. I don't want to do that right now. And
is Gary.
I want to assure that the board understands, and Joe, especially you, because I've been there and done that. You live, eat, and breathe this budget. You're intimately aware of every line item and every dollar and where it's spent and where it's not. So please, if we all ask questions, it's only based out of ignorance that we don't know. We're not in the process of questioning decisions. We're just trying to understand, and I think that understanding helps us move forward.
No problem. I didn't think any of the questions that were asked were, I mean, there's no such thing as a dumb question, right? So I thought all the questions were just that, people wanting to just understand what was going on, and I get it. You know, you talk about the budgeting process. I don't know if you've discussed it with your committee yet, but just from a timing standpoint, we'll get started on the process of developing the 2024 budget right after the annual meeting this year. That'll give us about probably better part of 5 or 6 weeks to get it done. So anything you guys have that you want to suggest or, you know, bring to the party, I'm good.
Thank you. So I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask a quick question? And I don't know if you're going to cover this. That's why I just wanted to hop in. And before I say anything, I just want to apologize because we have some guys here working and it might be noisy. But so Dan, you sent me a study that was updated in 2019 for major cost components to repair, replace, and or maintain, and it goes out through many years. And my first question is that updated, or do you look, does the HOA look 2 or 3 years in advance on what we expect to be spending in these large repairs?
It's in process.
Yeah.
It's in process being updated.
the board president, Rick Hughes, states it's in process, and I think I had a luncheon the other day with Eric Tibbetts. Eric was an 8-year board member. He stepped off in 19 or 18. It's been 8 years, and Eric kind of did an immense amount of work on this part of the budget as far as future capital replacement. And he shared with me some of his challenges and all that work along with Dave Dunn. So, yeah, I clearly think that, like the board president said, and like we've seen, especially with COVID and the changes to our society and the world and cost and labor and products and goods, probably will change every single one of these numbers. So I clearly think that should be an item on the docket if we can assist in any way.
And that document is on the website.
Yes.
Okay, just so everybody knows, that's on the HOA documents page of the website, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's one that was updated since the 2019, and that's the one that's on the website.
Yeah, this is the one, I don't know, it said parentheses 21 updated, but it doesn't say what was updated, but this came off of the website, so,
Okay.
yeah. So what I'd like to do is finish this,
I'm sorry, may I just add a little bit to this current discussion?
yes, sir.
I was talking about reserves before. Typically there are sort of 3 things that you do. You want to meet the state standard for percentage of assessments allocated. Then you want to have a plan to say, well, we're going to try to meet X% of our perceived future needs, and usually it's well under 100. And I think a discussion that was had a few years ago settled on about 25%, which is not uncommon. But then the last part is a reserve study. And the reserve study's result, I think, is this asset replacement sheet that Gary's talking about on the website, and it's very informative. And so I had 2 questions. One, are we anticipating another reserve study and budgeting it? So the last one that was done thoroughly apparently was 4 years ago. Or are we anticipating an effort to update that assessment sheet using new numbers?
We just said we're in process of updating it.
Yeah, the board president states that they're in the process of updating it, and I've said that we'd be happy to assist if they would
Sure.
like our assistance.
Are there any plans to do another reserve study?
When you say another one, you mean update what we have?
No, start from scratch.
Not in the next 4 weeks that I'll be here.
Yeah, I don't know, and what I'm hearing and sensing is I haven't seen to start from scratch, but clearly to review what's here and make improvements where necessary and update it where necessary.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Rick, I have a question at Cheryl. When you're doing your new study on trying to see where we're at for the forecast, are you guys getting getting bids? Are we hard bidding it, or are we just projecting numbers off of the cost of inflation and labor?
So
Yeah,
whenever we do it, we can get bids to say, what will this look like? And then we project some things.
Okay, I know how hard it is now. It was easier in the past to try and get hard bids that were comparable and going more into the future. I know today it's kind of like chasing a mouse around the house. You can't, the number doesn't stay the same, unfortunately.
Right.
All right, so back to the membership. We're talking about what signed agreements, what documents, what information would you like to see? I mean, I've drawn up a list based upon what I'd like to be educated on, but I'd like to hear from you all. You've mentioned BHP, the restaurant, and I'd like to maybe just clarify that to say any taco property that has a contract, to view those contracts.
Can we include the real estate office in that as well, Dan?
Yes, I think we have restaurant, hairdresser, and real estate, are those the three properties that I know, plus our rental units, is that what they're called?
Yes, but, yes, the rental properties, do we have? We don't have a contract with the.
I think it's,
We can. You can look at all that stuff,
Yeah.
all these things that you're talking about, the restaurant, the hairdresser. Real estate, all these things are amenities.
Yeah.
We've discussed these in board meetings before. If you want to suggest that market value rentals are charged, it all goes away. We don't have any of these amenities. The restaurant. It doesn't impact the budget. There's not one penny comes from Taco for that restaurant. There's no one on the board, no one in management has any financial interest in that restaurant. It is a contract between Taco and a partnership of Greg Petit and Bobby Sherman. It is not with BHP. So there's not one penny comes from Taco. Anything within those walls of the restaurant is borne by Greg and Bobby. So it's 100% an amenity. If people want to say we need to charge more, that's fine, but as far as looking at that contract, it's the exact same contract that was with Base Camp. The previous 3 entities that were in there were not charged rent. So dig into the last 5 contracts.
To add here, Rick, that, that we can dig into the contracts and discuss options. But everybody, the main points that stick for me are, number one, Taco's not spending any money. And number 2, vacant real estate space brings down the value of a property. So not only are we getting amenities, but we don't have these vacant spaces. And it just to have the amenities and to have the activity and the spaces filled with the amenities, it just, as a prospective renter or buyer, you're going to see a more lively property. And if we do turn around and charge a rent, and of course that is our committee's prerogative to recommend that. But what could very well happen if we pursue that is we get vacant spaces, and that in my opinion would be backfiring. So that's a discussion we can have in a later meeting, but that's just something that's important to consider for those spaces.
The other thing to note that is, while they don't pay rent, they do pay their fair share of utilities, water, trash pickup. They pay for all those things. They're not getting a free ride on that. And by the way, the real estate office does pay rent. It's a nominal amount, but they do pay rent for that space.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
But I don't mean to be naive, but I've never seen a person in the hairdresser shop. I thought that was vacated previous with COVID, so it's
No,
back
it's
operational.
by appointment. She does that by appointment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, she's not there waiting for walk-ins. She does it by
Okay.
appointment
I was
only.
gonna say, I've never seen anybody in there. Okay.
Yeah.
Usually booked pretty full on Tuesdays.
Yeah, she does Rick's hair.
Yeah.
Now I know where he goes on Tuesdays.
Another thing to think about with the restaurant and, well, mainly, I guess the restaurant, is that if we have that, it's good for the renters, the people that are renting their unit. It's a good amenity to have to show, hey, we do have this on site for your guests if you want, it's a good place. So it is good for that particular class of people who do rent their unit. It is a nice thing to put on to advertise that we do have this. So it is good for revenue for those people trying to rent their unit. That is something to think about. So,
Rick, a clarification on your statement about the restaurant. So I've heard, that's why I'm asking the question to be clear. Pre-base camp, at some point, I was told Taco paid to have some sort of general remodel in that space. Is that true or false?
You were given false information.
Okay.
No, that we fitted out that space way back before the first restaurateur went in there, and that was Cuckoo's. And we spent some money to fit out the space so that it could be a restaurant. But after that, all of the restaurateurs that came in after that, if they wanted to make any improvements, and there were several that made a lot of improvements in the property, none of that came out of Taco's pockets. It was the restaurateurs did it themselves.
Do they own any of the hard assets that are within the restaurants? You know, stoves, fryers, et cetera, that they leave, they take?
Over the years in the different contracts, there have been where one of the restaurateurs might have brought in some capital equipment on their own and then they took it with them. But the majority of the equipment that is there is actually owned by Taco. The whole space, everything in the space, all the furnishings, the kitchen equipment, everything, all of that's owned by Taco.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other question on that item? Water and sewer, I know you all did years worth of work on the water and sewer contract, and I remember the one statement in the water and sewer contract or agreement is that I think our attorney was going to be the individual who would review it every year and make sure the required sharing of information or actions were completed. Is that still the case? So we don't fall behind on our requirements in the contract?
Well, there's two. We not only have our attorney that may look at it from time to time, but I think more importantly is our representative on the ECWC advisory committee. That's the person that looks at that contract and looks at the annual goings on and making sure we're on the we're doing what we're supposed to do.
And who is that currently?
John. It was Jerry Q2, and now his name escapes me. John knows who it is.
Paul Brown? I was told Paul Brown.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, and he's an owner in Pinecone, I believe.
Okay. What about audits? I know the 21 audit is up, and I think the previous one, Gary, 20 can be found online too, probably, no?
I think an audit, and I wish that Lisa was on here, I think an audit is done every other year. Every other year.
No.
No?
We went back to an annual audit.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we went back to an annual audit. Our former auditor, Todd Beckstead in Grand Junction, indicated to us that it didn't make any sense to do a review because the cost would be almost the same. And it just made more sense to just do the annual audit every year. And that makes everybody happy.
Have you heard, Joe, when the 22 will be available?
Well, I imagine they're working on it right now. It's generally delivered at the annual meeting. So next month.
All right, we talked about capital replacement, we talked about insurance policy. The other one is, do we have a policy in writing on bidding? If we have a project like the roofs, you have to get so many bids in writing at a certain time? Or
I don't know that there's a written policy. We sent out, like, as an example for the roof here, we sent out 5 bid packages. 4 of them were local, 1 was to an out of state contractor. We got 3 of them back. And we eventually went with a local contractor.
Okay.
For 2 reasons. It was slowest bid and also the comments we were getting from homeowners was they would like a local contractor. And we agree.
All right, so those are the main ones I have written down. Is there any that I'm missing that the committee would like to acquire more information and read before our next meeting? All right,
And
here,
Dan, I'm sorry, we can always, add to that list as we go if something does come up. So it's a fluid list, but I think this is a great start.
okay. And I'll work with you, Stacy, and then I think we have to work through John to acquire the documents according to the bylaws. So we'll do whatever processes are necessary. So I can acquire a copy and then get it to the membership. All right. Establish goals. So is there any other business before we talk about the next meeting that you all would like to bring up that I missed in this introductory meeting? All right, is this time work well? You want to just look at another 2 weeks from now, basically? This is where you all answer me.
Works well for me. This is Cheryl.
Mary Helen?
Yeah, we're talking August 24th.
If that's 2 weeks from today, yes, that sounds right.
Okay, yes, that's fine.
Okay. Stuart?
Sorry, just checking my calendar. Yeah, that sounds fine.
All right, Stacy?
Yeah, there's a small chance I'll be on the road again from Texas that day, but I'll try to make the 23rd my travel day so I can attend this meeting in person.
Good. Gary?
That's fine.
All right, let's just plan on that, Gary, if we could, please. Same time, same channel.
You bet.
All right, any other business that you'd like to bring up?
So is it possible that someone can send out an invite, a calendar invite for the next meeting?
Sure. I will do it.
And it will
Thank
also
you.
be listed on the Budget Advisory Committee webpage. As soon as I get back there and delete today's, I'll just change it to 2 weeks from today.
Gary, where is that? I'm having a little trouble finding that. Where is
Go
that?
to the committee's page
Oh, there it is. Okay.
and then click on that button.
Got it.
All right, so just for review,
I think maybe Mary Helen's name was misspelled on that page. Can you double check that for me?
I think he fixed it. Gary.
Oh, he
fixed
did.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed. I noticed too.
I thought, oh, I've gotten her name wrong.
all right, so just for clarification, I'm gonna work with Stacy to acquire the documents that we've discussed, along with John and the board secretary, and get you these documents as soon as possible so you can start to digest them. And then we'll come up with a final agenda and move forward on analyzing and getting educated. Thank you all very much for your time and taking this opportunity to try and assist, and I appreciate it. I'm sorry.
I've got a suggestion.
Go ahead.
We have somebody's email address listed within this committee, so in case something comes up, we wanted to communicate back. We could.
Can you throw mine on there? Yep.
Thank
Great
you.
idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll have a safe day.
Thanks, everybody, for your time today. Thanks, Gary,
Yeah.
Elisa, Paige. Thank you guys for helping us with this.
And
Yes,
thanks,
thank
Joe.
you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.